Welcome back to another FPL team selection, this time out of Blank Gameweek 29. I'll discuss whether I used a free hit or not, and also how I did in Double Gameweek 28 so far. There's one game left between Bournemouth and Luton Town. So much is happening over the last couple of days. There are rumours currently on the Wednesday morning that Neto could be benched. That's according to Iraola's press conference. Let's see how it all turns out, of course. And Anthony Gordon picked up an injury against Chelsea. He's in my current team, and I was planning on starting him in Gameweek 30. So I have some contingency plans in place just in case Anthony Gordon is out for a prolonged period of time. We'll wait for more updates as the week progresses. There's a lot to discuss in this video, so be sure to drop a like and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Our aim is to get this video to 200 likes. Also check out the Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, the Discord server, FPL League, Drafthound, and links to the podcast version of these videos. All of that is there. Without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. I'm not claiming to be a seer or some kind of visionary, but in the last team selection video, after Iraola got 13 points and I ended up benching him, I just said, just wait and see how Iraola does against Burnley at home when so many people start him. And in the end, he delivered 2 points as West Ham were 2-0 down to Burnley. They made a late comeback, but Iraola, damage was done from an FPL perspective. And ultimately, what you do with Iraola is start him every single game week and hope he gets one of those rare double-digit hauls, which ultimately will be very, very helpful. And it does push him right up the rankings in terms of FPL points amongst goalkeepers. So Iraola, another disappointment from him. Dubravka thankfully conceded 3 times to Chelsea, so I didn't really lose out on too much in terms of points amongst my goalkeepers this time round, but the frustrations are still there, and Iraola is an FPL troll. The worst thing I did this week was take hits for defenders from Luton Town and Bournemouth, and with Alfie Doughty, I said it all along, I don't expect clean sheets against Crystal Palace or Bournemouth, but Doughty can get that one attack in return and potentially bonus points, and that's why I went for him. And also, Pedro Porro facing Aston Villa away, I didn't expect Spurs to keep a clean sheet, and with Estupiñán, I actually thought he could start, but there was still a doubt about that, and I also thought Forest would score. In the end, I got both of that wrong. I sold Estupiñán for Doughty for a hit at the very end, and that has cost me multiple points because Estupiñán was in my starting 11, and Doughty, I just don't see him really paying off that transfer away to Bournemouth. But let's wait and see. Hopefully some surprises are in store. The second defender is Zabani, who's got awful underlying numbers. We've covered this to death between him and Kerkez, and very unfortunate for those that went for the Hungarian left back because he was subbed off at halftime and got a booking. But ultimately Zabani didn't do much better as Bournemouth conceded twice to the worst team in the league in Sheffield United, but Burnley are also right down there as one of the worst teams in the Premier League as well. Yet my defenders and goalkeeper can't keep clean sheets against them, and that goes to show how poor defensively these teams are. My final defender is Saliba from a good defence, but they did concede to Brentford after Ramsdale made a calamitous error, and I think that was the only way Brentford were going to score. They had some chances after that. Tony had a great effort denied by Ramsdale, and Collins was left unmarked, and he produced a good header, and that was met by a tremendous save by Aaron Ramsdale once again. But Arsenal, I think, sometimes just concede these goals out of nowhere. They self-implode or make these big mistakes, whether it's their goalkeeper or their defenders, but ultimately they aren't conceding many chances overall. I have to say, against Brentford and Porto in the second leg, Arsenal have been a bit more vulnerable and they haven't been controlling games as much, scoring as many goals, but they're still getting the job done, and they're the most informed team in this calendar year. I won't sugarcoat it. There were 2 midfielders who carried my FPL team this week. One of them was Heung-min Son with 17 points against Aston Villa, and I made it a big point in the preview to Double Gameweek 28. Even going into Gameweek 27, when there was this big trend to buying Son, it made sense. He just came out of the blank, good fixtures featuring in Blank Gameweek 29. And one key reason why I justified buying Son back in Gameweek 27 was his record against Aston Villa. 6 goals and 1 assist in 8 games before Gameweek 28, and he has increased that tally to 7 goals and 3 assists in 9 games. So Son loves playing against Aston Villa, and he is a great option for Blank Gameweek 29. That is putting it lightly. He's going to be a very template captain, especially after that 17-point haul. The next midfielder is Cole Palmer, who got 13 points on Monday night against Newcastle. And a lot of people were talking about selling him around Game Week 24-25 because he was blanking in 26 and very likely to in Game Week 29, which is now the case. But Palmer against Brentford and Newcastle, I looked at those two games and I thought, no, there's no way I want to sell him. And thankfully, Palmer has justified that decision tenfold. And for those that kept him on the wildcard, fair play. I also think he's a great option from Game Week 30 onwards. You bench him in blank Game Week 29. It's very easy to because of his price. And there's no denying that Palmer is one of the best FPL assets this season. Only Salah has more double-digit hauls than Cole Palmer, who has been right up there in terms of FPL points since his first start back in Game Week 7. Next up is Phil Foden, quite disappointing against Liverpool. A lot of people benched or sold Phil Foden, and ultimately they will be looking to buy him back in around Game Week 31 or 32. But even for those that held him like me, I'm quite happy to keep him for this blank in 29, and then in Game Week 30 against Arsenal at home, I think Foden could be one of the difference makers in that game, and ultimately in the big games, he is stepping up this season. The next midfielder is Saka, who played very poorly in my opinion against Porto. Against Brentford he was quite indifferent. I think he had a decent performance but wasn't able to really contribute in terms of goals or assists. But I still think Saka is a season-long hold, and you probably bench him against Man City. You easily bench him this week or you free hit and then you can have him back in your team. But ultimately you want Saka from Game Week 31 until the end of the campaign, where Arsenal have decent fixtures, not as good as Liverpool's or Man City's. And if I had to pick between Saka and Son at this moment in time, I would lean towards Son, but that's really up until Game Week 34. If you're looking even longer term to keep for the rest of the season, I would still argue that Saka is the one to hold. Some big decisions have to be made in FPL over the next few weeks, and Ollie Watkins is one of them. Do we sell around Game Week 31 when Aston Villa's fixtures turn for the worse? And selling Watkins could enable you to go for Son, Saka, Foden, Salah and Palmer in the midfield alongside Haaland up front. But with Ollie Watkins, I was very disappointed by him in that match against Tottenham. Ultimately, when McGinn was sent off, you know that Aston Villa have no chance of coming back. But even before, when it was 11v11, I think Watkins had some good moments. He made some great runs as always. He was pressing Romero quite well. It looked like a very good battle between the two. But Watkins was very wasteful in front of goal, and I'm not sure what happened to him. But Aston Villa had an off night, an off day to say the least, that's for sure. And it doesn't happen too often for Ollie Watkins this season. And also next up is Solanke. I mean, it's not even just an off day for him. It was an absolute disaster. He had a goal disallowed, and you could argue that was rightfully done. But he also missed a penalty. He slipped during it, and Solanke produced his worst ever FPL return throughout his career during his time at Liverpool and Bournemouth. But he's got one more opportunity to salvage something. Iraola said that Solanke's feeling better and feeling less pain, so that is a good sign, and hopefully he can deliver against Luton Town. Before that game was ultimately suspended, Solanke actually scored against Luton Town earlier this season, so hopefully he can do something similar and perhaps even build upon that, especially for those that triple captain him this week. The final forward, another one who blanked, and that is Erling Haaland. Very slim pickings in the forward line this week. You've got Wissa, Woodrow and a few others delivering the goods up until now, but nothing from Haaland, Solanke, Watkins or Morris, arguably the four best forwards in Double Gameweek 28, on paper at least, but it hasn't turned out that way. Thanks to Son and Palmer, I am on a very small green arrow by around 2,000, 3,000 places because I took a -8 hit. I benched Pedro Porro 7 points. I sold Estupinian for a hit when he kept a clean sheet. And if I had started Porro and Estupinian, this would be looking like an incredible week for me. So FPL can sometimes come down to these fine margins and things you don't expect, like Estupinian starting and also keeping a clean sheet, doing both at the same time, and then Porro keeping a clean sheet away to Aston Villa. Well, that's why football and FPL is very interesting, because you can get these bench decisions wrong and also make transfers prematurely, arguably, or you start Estupinian every single week and the one time you sell him, he actually ends up delivering the goods. But that is the way the game is. I think Solanke could easily help me rise a little bit more in terms of the ranks, especially in mini leagues. And as for Doughty and Zabani, well, one return from those two combined would be quite promising and very welcome. But I have to say, I'm expecting nothing whatsoever from Zabani or Doughty, just appearance points, and hopefully they can give me at least 3 or 4 combined. But Solanke's the one I'm looking at to make a difference with my remaining fixtures, and I think it should be enough for a green arrow, unless the likes of Barkley and Morris go crazy. Their effective ownership isn't that high anyway, so I'm not too concerned. But it has been a very disappointing Double Gameweek 28 performance so far and also points tally. So hopefully it can have a bit of shine by the end of the Wednesday match between Bournemouth and Luton Town. I have done it. It wasn't really something I wanted to do, but I have activated the free hit for Blank Gameweek 29. I only had 5 players. To get to 7, I would need to take a -4 hit. And I also needed to buy back players like Bowen and Ivan Toney, who I've sold over the last couple of weeks. But Flecken is in goal, away to Burnley. I don't trust Brentford defensively, to be quite honest with you. But looking at all the goalkeepers and all the teams, I think the best chance of a clean sheet lies with Brentford. And in certain games against Arsenal and Manchester City, they have been quite resilient defensively. So I'm hoping they can do something similar against Burnley. But I think because of the nature of the opposition, I think they will play that game differently and there will be more gaps to exploit. And Burnley could score a goal, especially through Fofana, who's probably their star of the show at this moment in time. But Flecken is my choice for goalkeeper at the moment, but I might reconsider a Brentford defensive double-up. I benched him last week, but I'm looking to start Pedro Porro in Blank Gameweek 29. If you want a bit more of a differential, I would also recommend either Udogie or Romero. And I have to say, I talked about skipping Romero quite recently, but he's quite good for the bonus points and he averages the same number of points per game as Pedro Porro, around 3.9. So maybe you can go for the Argentine instead if you want a bit more of a differential. And Udogie does pose some attacking potential on the left-hand side. But in terms of bonus points, I think Pedro Porro is by far the best. He takes set pieces and even from open play, I think he can deliver the occasional assist. So he is in here and it's probably the best defender in Blank Gameweek 29. As for Sergio Reguilon, Thomas Frank said that he should be available for Burnley. So that is a very good update about Sergio Reguilon from Thomas Frank. I'm quite optimistic about it, but I'm not so sure about doubling up on Brentford defensively. That's something I might reconsider. The problem is, do I expect West Ham to keep a clean sheet? No. Aston Villa, Luton Town, Nottingham Forest, all these teams, probably not. I think the weakest part of either free hitting in Blank Gameweek 29 or just when you're looking to buy players in is the defensive line. I don't really see many clean sheets in this game week, and who knows, I could be wrong. I could end up looking like a fool, but for me, the bulk of the points will be in the midfield and forward line, which is typical in FPL. But I look at this week and I don't see many clean sheets across the board. And the same applies to the last defender, Alfie Doughty, facing Nottingham Forest at home. Good fixture on paper. There is a small chance of a clean sheet, but with Doughty, whether he plays as a left centre-back or a left wing-back, he can get assists from set pieces. And in the last game against Crystal Palace, he played as a left wing-back, but he also made that mistake, which led to Crystal Palace's goal. So let's see if he can bounce back from that against Bournemouth and then in Game Week 29 against Nottingham Forest. But for me, this is the best defensive free you can go for in Blank Game Week 29, which goes to show the limited options in the backline. This is where things get interesting and free hitters could be rewarded. Heung-min Son is a great option this week. A lot of us have him already, so this is not something groundbreaking, but facing Fulham away, Son did very well in the reverse fixture back in Game Week 9. He doesn't have a great record against Fulham overall, but I think he can do very well at Craven Cottage this time out. And the same goes for James Maddison. He loves playing against Fulham. He has never blanked against them in the Premier League. In Craven Cottage, he's got 3 goals and 4 assists in 6 games. And get this, Maddison hasn't blanked away from home all season. That's 61 points in 8 away matches. He averages 7.6 points per game. So I think Maddison could be a very underrated option for the captaincy. I am considering him over Heung-min Son. They are 2 of the best options in Blank Gameweek 29 and thus for the armband as well. My third midfielder is Leon Bailey. He's my preference over Douglas Luiz purely because the fixture is away from home. I think Douglas Luiz is a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde. At Villa Park, he is incredible, averaging over 9 points per game, but in away matches, he can't even average 3 points per game, and he does blank more often than not. With Leon Bailey, he's also another one who benefits from playing at Villa Park, but he's also a bit more, let's say, proportionate and balanced in terms of returning home and away compared to a Douglas Luiz. And Bailey did score against West Ham in the reverse fixture, coming on as a substitute. But then again, Douglas Luiz got 15 points against West Ham in the reverse fixture as well. So I still think Douglas Luiz is a consideration. He's a bonus points machine and on penalties. And if Bailey starts in the Europa Conference League, that would make me reconsider, and I would go for the Brazilian instead. My final midfielder is Jarrod Bowen, no risk of rotation whatsoever, and he has a decent record against Aston Villa with 5 goals and 1 assist in 11 appearances against the Villains, and he's by far the best option that West Ham have to offer. In second place, I'd go for Kudus, and in third, it would be Areola. I am going for a front three at the moment, and Watkins is just a no-brainer. There are 5 players for me who are essential for Blank Gameweek 29. Son, Maddison, Bowen, Watkins, and the 5th one would be Ivan Toney. I think he's another one who could do really well. He's currently on a 4-game goal-scoring drought. I think he'll break it against Burnley. I know Wissa is the one who's in form. He scored in 3 consecutive games, but Wissa only gives you 5 or 6 points. Toney, whenever he scores, very likely to get bonus points. He's on penalties, and everything goes through him. So I think his ceiling is much higher than Wissa, and he's more likely to score in this fixture. But Wissa did score in the reverse fixture against Burnley earlier this season, so that's something else to consider. I think these 2 strikers are also contenders for the captaincy. Same with Jarrod Bowen, but I'd probably put him in 5th place, and I think you really have to choose between Son, Maddison, Watkins, and Ivan Toney for the armband. The final forward is Carlton Morris, who some of you may even captain as a differential, and let's see how he does against Bournemouth on Wednesday night. But Morris remains a good option for Blank Gameweek 29, and he's in great home form. That's 4 consecutive returns in home games, 26 points in that time frame. He's averaging 6.5 points at Kenilworth Road during that spell. So Morris could be a very decent option. And for me, it's very close for my benching dilemmas in terms of who to start, because there's also a few good options from Nottingham Forest, like Anthony Elanga, who got 9 points and 2 assists in the reverse fixture against Luton Town earlier this season. But let's now talk about the captaincy, my bench, and some decent alternatives in each position. My bench is currently Areola, Elanga, Soufal, and Murillo. It's not a great looking defence this week. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but the bulk of the points will be made in the midfield and forward line. If you get those spots on the free hit, I think you're going to have a very good week, get a significant green arrow, and gain a lot of points on your original team if you had just taken hits and not play the free hit chip, and also over some people who are going to be taking massive hits this week, or if they're just going to have 5 players, that won't be enough in my opinion to secure a green arrow. But there's a mixture of things. If you can get to 7 players, I think that's okay, and if you can cover those 5 players in particular, Son, Maddison, Watkins, Toney, and Bowen, I think you're well set, and you can save the free hit chip for later in the season. It's all team dependent, of course, and one benching dilemma I have is whether to start Anthony Elanga over Leon Bailey or Carlton Morris, but I'm currently going for a 3-4-3, and I'm also going for a double up in Brentford defensively. Now, my current captaincy choice is James Maddison. That record against Fulham is already phenomenal. His away record is also staggering. No blanks in 8 games this season on the road. I think Maddison could be a very underrated captaincy shout. Let's see if I stick to this by the deadline, because there are some big pros to go for Heung-min Son instead. For example, of course, there is this template thing where he's a protective captain, so to speak, and you kind of guarantee a green arrow from that perspective. But my main reasoning for captaining a Son in the end, potentially, is his high ceiling, and that's something he has over James Maddison. Son can give you 17 points, as he did against Aston Villa, and he's done it many times this season. I think Maddison's ceiling is a bit lower, and he's also quite injury prone, so there's a few things that do go against him. But at the moment, my current captain is Maddison, and it's between these 2 Spurs midfielders for the armband. But I have to say, I'm not discounting Bowen, Watkins, Toney. Even Morris could be a very decent shout with his home form. But I think one of those 5 players that I keep talking about that are essential for Blank Gameweek 29, one of them will be my captain in the end, and I'm currently favouring the Spurs midfielders. There is a link to Drafthound in the description below. I'd highly recommend you check it out, and there are so many tools at your disposal, such as the player rankings, which for me is my favourite tool personally. They are recommending Son, Watkins, Bowen, and Maddison as the best options this week, which I've done as well. The algorithm doesn't favour Toney as much, but I'm backing him to do well in Blank Gameweek 29. And in terms of expected points, it's 58.7, but Drafthound suggests starting Areola over Flecken. That's one key change, and they're also looking to captain Son with Watkins as the vice. The back three, of course, everything is the exact same. It's my free hit team, of course, and they are recommending Areola instead of Flecken. But I would actually ask your opinions in the comment section down below in terms of which goalkeeper you would go for and start in Blank Gameweek 29. And there have been some changes to the best free hit team suggested by Drafthound. Areola in goal, Romero, Region, and Doughty. So Region comes in for Ruslev, and that is based on the injury updates we got from Thomas Frank, and Drafthound take that into account and update the algorithms daily. Son, Bowen, Maddison and Douglas Luiz is their suggested midfield four, and a front three of Watkins, Morris and Fofana. They're not really suggesting or recommending Tony too much, but that's something that probably will change over the next few days. They've got Sells, the Nottingham Forest goalkeeper, on the bench, Bailey and a Burnley defender, and the same goes for Mengi. So all of that is there. And ultimately, yeah, some quite interesting picks, and Burnley is favoured a little bit by Drafthound. There's a big difference also in terms of expected points, from roughly 23.9 to 59 with this best free hit team. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Maybe you prefer Drafthound's free hit team compared to mine. But now, let's go to fpl.team and talk about some plans for my own squad in Game Week 30. Injury updates will be crucial, so if Anthony Gordon is available for that home fixture against West Ham, I'd be very happy to start him even over Saka in Game Week 30, and I could make one transfer at the back and buy Gusto, because I don't trust Bournemouth defensively whatsoever, and I don't want to start Zabani for as long as possible. So maybe buying him was a mistake in the end, and ultimately have to hold my hands up and say that was probably a mistake. But it would be Dubravka or Areola in goal. Honestly, they're both trolls. I'm not expecting much from either of them. A back three of Ake, Gusto, Pedro Porro, a midfield four of Gordon if he's fit, Foden, Palmer and Son, who would be my captain, Haaland, Solanke and Watkins up front. But my main dilemma is I can't get to Salah without selling Haaland for a hit. It's going to be very tricky, and that's where those that sold Haaland in Game Week 28 will profit most from that transfer, because I'd rather have Salah against Brighton at home than Haaland at home to Arsenal. But it could be a blessing in disguise, because Haaland has done very well against the Gunners before at the Etihad with that massive haul towards the end of last season. Things are a bit different this time round, but you never know. If Man City are on it, they can destroy any team in the league. My bench would be Areola, Saka, Zabani and Saliba, all hypothetical of course. A lot could change because there's an international break, a lot of football yet to be played in the Premier League, and also the FA Cup matches in Blank Gameweek 29, and Anthony Gordon could be out for several months. Let's see what the official news is, and once we get that, I can make an informed decision on what to do with Anthony Gordon. I could always start Saka over Gordon, that's not a big deal, but going without selling Game Week 30 is going to hurt a little bit. I'd like to have him back as soon as possible, so if I don't get him in Game Week 30, the plan would definitely be to do so in Game Week 31. I could do something like this. It would incur a -4 hit, and of course that's with the assumption that Anthony Gordon is fit and available to play against West Ham at home in Game Week 30 and Everton at home in Game Week 31. So let's see how things pan out. I've got some backup plans just in case. I've still got the wild card in my back pocket. The same goes for the bench boost, but I have used the triple captain and the free hit chip this time out of Blank Gameweek 29, and let's see how that pans out. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 23k subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, Drafthound, and also my podcast. And be sure to give it a 5-star review on your mobile phones. It'd be massively appreciated as always. I wish you all the best of luck for Blank Gameweek 29 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.